Hello, wonderful educators, and welcome to the Teaching Toolkit. I'm Dr. Answer, your teacher. And I'm so glad you're joining me today. Teaching is a journey filled with passion, purpose, and sometimes, a whole lot of questions. It can feel like a complex puzzle, right? But remember, you are not alone in navigating these complexities. We're all in this together, constantly learning and refining our craft. In this video, we're going to demystify some fundamental concepts that are key to effective instruction. We'll explore the difference between a teaching method and a teaching technique, understand what a teaching strategy truly means, and define what it takes to be truly skilled in teaching. We'll also delve into the two main categories of teaching methods, teacher-centered and learner-centered approaches, exploring their purposes, characteristics, and what makes them tick. So, grab your favorite warm beverage, and let's get activated. The core concepts of teaching. Let's start by clarifying some terms that are often used interchangeably, but actually have distinct meanings. Understanding these distinctions can really empower your planning and delivery. First up, method of teaching. Think of this as your overall approach to teaching. It's the general procedure that structures and implements the teaching process. Essentially, it encompasses all the things a teacher does in the classroom to enable learning. It even sets guidelines for the kind of behavior you expect from your students. Next, we have technique of teaching. If a method is the big picture, a technique is a specific activity you perform while using that method. These are the actual activities you carry out to achieve your teaching goals. For example, within a broader method, you might use techniques like a lecture, a question and answer session, a group discussion, either whole class or small group, or even a role play. A single method can involve many different techniques. Now, let's talk about strategy of teaching. This is about the sequencing and manipulation of your chosen techniques and their activities during a lesson. As a teacher, you need to strategize, meaning you tactically sequence and manipulate specific activities to facilitate the learning process. For instance, if you choose a learner-centered method, you might select a combination of techniques like a case study, role play, small group discussion, brainstorming, or a demonstration, and then you'd decide the best order to use them. Finally, there's skill of teaching. This refers to your ability or competence in teaching effectively. It's about using the right methods, techniques, strategies, and resources at the right time. Your teaching skill shines through in many areas, such as lesson planning, organizing content, methods, techniques, strategies, resources, and even assessment procedures. It's also evident in how you question students and handle their questions, how you manage your classroom, and how you communicate, using both verbal and nonverbal cues. These four concepts, methods, techniques, strategies, and skills, are all related activities, but they differ in meaning. They are all crucial parts of planning to enhance effective teaching and learning, and together, they describe how a lesson is to be taught. Identifying these elements shows how skillful and prepared a teacher is for a lesson. Diving into teaching methods, teacher-centered approaches. Now, let's explore the two primary categories of teaching methods. We'll start with teacher-centered methods. This approach is also known by several other names, such as the teacher transmission method, the banking method, or the direct method. In this setup, the teacher takes the central role in the teaching and learning situation. The teacher largely dominates the process by telling students what they need to know. The main focus here is typically on what is taught, rather than on the individual learner. Why do many teachers opt for this method? One key purpose is to cover a large area of knowledge quickly, often to prepare learners for examinations. It's also used to provide information that students might not otherwise have access to, for instance, due to a lack of textbooks or other learning resources. Additionally, it's effective for introducing new knowledge that is mainly theoretical or when the teacher needs to explicitly tell learners what to do first. Teacher-centered methods operate on a few core assumptions. The teacher is assumed to know best and is considered the primary source of knowledge. Students are often seen as having no prior knowledge. Learners are generally expected to be passive recipients of information. It's assumed that knowledge can be gained through passive transfer. The teacher is believed to know exactly what learners need to learn. And, perhaps most challenging, these methods often assume that all learners learn in the same way and have the same learning needs. So, what are the characteristics of a teacher-centered classroom? The teacher selects everything: what the learner will learn, the techniques used, the strategies employed, and even the pace of learning. The teacher's primary role is to communicate knowledge to learners. The teacher teaches most of the time, often not allowing learners to learn on their own. Students are encouraged to think they can only learn when the teacher is present. And, importantly, learners are often regarded as a uniform group, rather than individuals with diverse needs, interests, talents, and abilities. Despite these characteristics, teacher-centered methods do offer some advantages. They save time because all learners are exposed to new knowledge simultaneously. This approach allows for faster coverage of the syllabus or curriculum. The teacher maintains significant control of the teaching and learning situation, which helps in maintaining good class control. And, it ensures that learners are exposed to new information or knowledge in a uniform manner. However, there are also notable disadvantages. Learners often play a more passive role, primarily as listeners, and may not actively participate in the lesson. Lessons are planned according to the teacher's wishes, interests, and abilities, which means learners' individual interests and abilities may not be adequately considered. This can create problems for students. Those with difficulties might fall behind, while bright ones might be slowed down because the whole class needs to follow along. This imbalance can sometimes lead to indiscipline. Some common techniques used in teacher-centered methods include lecture technique, drill and practice technique, questioning and responding technique, whole class discussion technique, and teacher-led demonstration technique. Diving into teaching methods, learner-centered approaches. Now, let's shift our focus to learner-centered methods. This approach places the learner at the center of the teaching and learning process. The goal is for the learner to actively participate in the lesson. It also encourages students to reflect on what and how they are learning. Here, the learner becomes responsible for their own learning, while the teacher's role is to facilitate that learning. This method is heavily influenced by the constructivist philosophy of teaching, which emphasizes active construction of knowledge. The purposes of a learner-centered method are deeply rooted in student well-being and growth. It aims to help the learner be happy and interested in what is being taught and learned. It supports their day-to-day development with a feeling of achievement. It encourages learners to be involved in their own learning. It fosters a sense that others understand and appreciate their efforts. And ultimately, it helps them feel their own worth. Learner-centered methods are guided by several important principles. Learners should acquire skills that are in line with their cognitive stage, emotional, and physical development. Teachers should use incentives and rewards to arouse and sustain learners' interests and enhance their natural learning. Learners' needs should regulate what they learn in the classroom. The selection of content, method, techniques, and strategies should be based on understanding the nature, needs, and interests of the learners. Effective teaching and learning must recognize, identify, and cater to the needs of learners at different age levels. What are the characteristics you'd see in a learner-centered classroom? The learning environment is typically relaxed and pleasant. Learners are encouraged to engage in more activities and actively participate in their own learning. There are frequent group activities to facilitate exchange of views, collaboration, and teamwork. The teacher knows the learners as individuals, understanding their strengths, weaknesses, and learning needs. Many and varied learning resources are provided for students to use. The focus is more on motivation, reinforcement, and rewards, rather than corporal punishment. And the teacher acts as a guide and a facilitator of learning, providing suitable and appropriate learning conditions. The advantages of this approach are extensive. Teachers can use flexible techniques that consider individual differences, adapting teaching to suit each learner. Learners are encouraged to think and work for themselves. The relaxed and conducive learning conditions help to unearth talents and encourage self-learning. It improves participation and enhances retention of knowledge. Learner-centered methods lead to improved performance among learners. They help develop problem-solving skills and foster collaborative learning. Learning becomes more fun and the approach facilitates personalized learning. However, there are also some disadvantages to consider. It often relies heavily on the teacher's ability to create materials appropriate to learners' expressed needs. This method requires more skill from the teacher, as well as more of their time and resources. The techniques employed might sometimes lead to chaos in the classroom. There's a risk of giving too much independence to learners. And it's an approach that might have less structure or discipline compared to the teacher-centered method. Some common techniques found in learner-centered methods include small group discussion, brainstorming, role play, games and simulations, field trips or nature walks, and individualized learning. Wrapping up. So, as we've seen, both teacher-centered and learner-centered methods have their place in education. One isn't inherently better than the other, rather, the most effective approach often depends on the specific goals for a particular group of students. Acquiring knowledge and understanding are distinct but related mental processes, and both are legitimate goals for all students. An effective teacher knows a variety of methods and can select the one, or combination, most likely to achieve a lesson's objectives with a particular group of students. Choosing the right method, techniques, and strategies requires thoughtful consideration of your context, your students, and your learning objectives. It's a dynamic process, not a static one. Your teaching philosophy will evolve throughout your career, shaped by every class you teach, every lecture you give, and every student you interact with. It's okay if it feels like a lot to take in. This constant reflection and adaptation are part of what makes teaching such a rich and rewarding profession. You're not expected to have all the answers right away, and seeking to understand these concepts is a huge step in your professional growth. Keep exploring, keep reflecting, and keep connecting with fellow educators. You are part of a vibrant community committed to making a difference in the lives of learners. Thank you for joining me on the Teaching Toolkit today. Keep nurturing your teaching spirit, and I look forward to our next conversation. Until then, happy teaching.